Today is May 24th, 2021, and my name is Kay Kranz, and Emily Magyar and I are interviewing Miss Renee Dwyer.
Yes.
And I was so lucky last summer to meet you, Renee, on the water.
That's
when
right.
we were kayaking.
We were kayaking.
Because the place that you live is still so intact historically.
Yes. Yes.
And I was so excited that you were open to some stranger just saying, "Hey, can I talk to you about your cabin?"
Yes, it was very interesting. We do get quite a few kayakers that inquire about the resort.
Well, Ruth, tell us where you're from, when you were born, and how long you've been coming up to
Right.
Lakewood.
Well, I was born in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and I come from a family of 6 children, 1 boy and 5 girls, and we started coming up. My mother, when she had her first 3 children, and then there was a lull of like 4 or 5 years until the next 3 came. And so when those first 3 were a little older, I would say that would be in the early 50s, let's say 1950. My grandmother, who had friends that lived up in Hazelhurst, they would come up and visit them in Hazelhurst and bring the whole family. My father at the time was employed, he had a trucking business, and so what had happened was Mr. Harland Jones worked for my father as a truck driver, and he mentioned to my father that he just purchased a resort up in Manitowish Waters, and he thought he should bring the family up. And so we guesstimate, I kind of got together with all my brother and my sisters and thought the first time that we came up was probably around 1952. My mother, I think she was pregnant with child number 4, and so they came up to Mr. Jones' Lakewood Lodge.
Can you tell me your parents' names?
Oh, Elaine and Lawrence Glarum.
Glarum.
Yes, yes.
And so Mr. Jones worked for your grandfather?
My father.
For your father?
Yes.
So the Joneses were from Kenosha as well?
They were. Mrs. Jones, they never had children, but, and we always thought, well, Mrs. Jones, she loved children, and Mr. Jones was not that crazy about them. So having us 6 kids come up there at one time was, you know, we helped him out quite a bit, so that kind of made out for a few things.
What was Harlan's wife's name?
Lorraine.
So it was Harlan and Lorraine Jones?
Yes, Harlan and Lorraine Jones.
Did you always stay in the same cabin?
Oh, wow. We, as our family grew, sometimes we occupied all of the cabins. Yes, so yes, there's 6 cabins and a lodge, and many times we would bring cousins or friends up and things like that. And Mrs. Jones, Lorraine, she was a lot of fun, so they'd like to stay in the lodge. I believe there was 7 or 8 rooms for rent in the lodge also. And so they would, you know, have fun with Mrs. Jones at night. So a lot of us wanted to sleep in the lodge instead of the cabin.
How long would you stay when you came?
Well, we would, after a few years, my father, we got into a tradition that we would be coming up here every summer. And my father, he would bring all us kids and my mother, stay a while, and then go back home to work and leave my mother with 6 kids here. But usually my grandmother would come and she would help out. And so sometimes we would spend a month and a half in coming up here.
Well, tell me about, as you were growing up, how that resort became so important to you.
I think it became a second home for us. We felt a freedom that I don't think, unless you experience the northern woods, you don't know what I'm talking about, because it was our playground. You know, my mother, it wasn't like we were going to go out and play in the street, and maybe she was unaware of what was in the forest, but we would take off in the morning and she wouldn't see us till late afternoon, because we'd explore the woods and all the different flowers and plants and the birds and the creatures that we saw. And you know, it was something that became part of all of us. As a matter of fact, I have two sisters that live up here now because of the ownership of what was in our hearts and minds for Northwoods, especially Manitowish Waters.
Well, tell me some of the things that you did at the resort, or some of the things that the Jones had organized for families that came up.
Yeah, they had shuffleboard court, which was great fun. He had horseshoes. He had a family picnic area there with a big fire pit and barbecue there. He has a two-car garage with an upstairs, which was like a playroom. He had ping pong up there, lots of games and puzzles and books and things like that. There was never, it wasn't ever boring. You know, we had a lot of fun there.
Did you have meals in the lodge, or did your mom cook at the house? At the cabin, I mean.
Initially, Mrs. Jones, because of the lodge had these rooms, she opened up her kitchen and she would serve meals to them. You could always count on her to knock at her back door and she would sell you ice cream for maybe 2 cents or a nickel, you know. But that's actually, she, after the lodge got a little older, that she stopped serving meals, but she still had the lodge open for sleeping. Mm-hmm. So, but for the most part, we cooked meals at home. We had kind of a tradition when we came up. My mother, she would pack a breakfast for us, and we'd stop at a picnic area and have breakfast with all the kids. And then we'd get up here in time to go to, there was a bakery, Martha's Bakery, off of 51, and she always had the best donuts and breads and things like that. And so we would make sure we got up here early enough to get her donuts and breads.
Do you remember where on 51 Martha's Bakery was?
I believe it was not too far north of Little Bohemia. I believe it was on, what would that be, east side of the road?
If you're going north, which direction, left or right?
Right.
If you're going north, on the right, okay.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And she was there for many years, but you know, I'm sure she got older, and so the building, I'm not sure if it even exists anymore, but that was Martha's Bakery. Yeah, great donuts. So.
Okay, so I have some questions about the lodge specifically.
Sure.
So where exactly was the lodge located, or is located today?
The lodge is, actually, it's right next to my cabin. My cabin was the first of the 6th, and so it is just south of my cabin. And he has, there's quite, you know, acreage, and the house kind of sits upwards. It's a beautiful home. Like I said, Mr. Dipple bought the home from Harland, and or his niece, and then turned it into a large home. It went from the lodge to the home. I think they kept the main fireplace and things like that, so there's some things that are similar from what it was, but much updating and changes.
Could you describe where it is, like, geographically? So it's located on Benson Lake,
Yes,
correct?
it's located on Benson Lake.
Does it go into the river, or is it just is it on the main portion of the lake?
I think it faces more on the main portion of the lake. Yeah, because our cabin, which is right next to that, is partially on the part of Benson Lake and then the start of the river. So that lodge would have been primarily on Benson Lake.
Mm-hmm. And so how much of the original lodge still exists today if you were to walk on your property?
I think, like I said, I believe they kept the fireplace. Of course, you'd want to have the main windows facing the lake, and so he has a very large wraparound porch, which is beautiful. And I think most of those things, I do have some pictures and brochures that are from
Wonderful.
Jones's. So I have a few more of these if you wanted to keep them. There's actually, that's the picture of Mrs. Jones, Lorraine Jones.
So each of the cabins, they had names, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember what they are?
They were all birds' names. And he made out postcards. There was the lodge, and then there was the chickadee, which is my cabin. And then right next to me is the turtle dove. And the turtle dove is right on the river, whereas there's another cabin in back of the turtle dove called the cricket, which is a cute little one-bedroom cabin. And then next to the cricket is the skylark, and my other sister has that cabin, the skylark. And next to that is the brown thrush. And next to that was the oriole. The oriole was the largest of the cabins. I believe it had 3 bedrooms, and it had a beautiful outdoor screen porch that we used quite a bit. And the oriole, as well as the screen porch and all that, is now was purchased by John Butler, who turned it into his house and added on eventually, and they have made it his house. So he came up some years after and liked the area, and so stayed.
So does that still look like the other cabins on the outside?
It doesn't.
Oh,
it
so
doesn't.
it's totally changed.
Yes, yeah. The brown thrush that's right next to it, they also own, but that has stayed the same. Yeah, yeah. And some of these cabins have had renovations to enlarge areas, like the Skylark used to have a porch, a screened-in porch. Well, one of the walls got in between, got torn down to make it so the porch, and it's a bigger living area now. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that the turtle dove was renovated also to make it a larger open space. And actually, we probably about 5 years ago put a leisure room on our chickadee. It's mind-boggling to me that 6 members of our family used to stay in that little cabin, but anyway, that leisure room really affords us a lot more space. So there has been some renovations to some of these, but I'll try to keep the same paint colors, the same architecture, that sort of thing. So,
would it ever be possible for you to show us your cabin?
Oh, sure.
We could maybe take some pictures.
That would be fine. That would be fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Actually, Emily and I drove out there last week because,
Oh, yeah?
We're sitting talking about where these resorts are, and I said,
Right.
well, why don't we just drive out so I can give you a feel? Because there's another resort that we thought was the same resort layered,
Yes.
but we found out it's two different resorts, a Patterson
Yes,
resort.
that's farther down, yeah.
So anyways, we drove out, no one was there, but we just looked, and the architecture on the outside of those cabins is just awesome.
They're all log.
The vertical log and then the horizontal trims. And
Yes.
do you know who built the cabins?
Actually, there's an article that was written in 1988 in Lakeland Times, and I'll read this to you.
Okay.
From Lakeland Times, 1988 newspaper. 50 years ago, in 1938, they're speaking, this was in 1988, Ed Hunter Sr. moved his family north to establish a Northwoods Lodge on Benson Lake in Manitowish Waters and called it Hunter's Campo Woods. It consisted of 6 cabins, a lodge, and an ice house. And it was quite a change from the active city life as an attorney in South Bend, Indiana. With his experience, he became the district attorney for Vilas County. At the time, there were few realtors in the area, so he also became a realtor, the realtor. His first office was a 2-room at the top of the stairs in the Derwin Building, now Lakeland Variety and Ross Sportswear. In the early 50s, he moved the office downstairs into the building now occupied by Strowing Shop for Children. When Ed Hunter Jr. reached high school age, he became a guide working out of many resorts in Vilas, Oneida, and Iron counties. In 1951, Ed Jr. started to work full-time for his father in Lake Tomahawk. He operated that office until 1971. A third generation of Hunter's Realty in 1980 made the most successful real estate office at that time. And that's the end of the article. I know that Barb Mitchinson actually has the original newspaper of this.
Okay.
So that'll be very interesting to see. I know that there was Hunter's real estate in Saint Germain also at one point in time.
I remember that
Yes.
real estate as a young person.
Yes.
I remember Hunter Realty.
Yeah. So he built this for his family, and at the time there was a bathroom with toilet and sink, but if you wanted to take a shower, you had to go to the shower house.
There was a shower.
There was a shower house, yeah. A man and a lady shower house, yes. And so later on, he invested in putting hot water heaters and showers in
the cabins.
In the cabins, yes, yeah.
And Hunter did that, not Jones.
No, Mr. Jones
Oh,
did
Mr.
that.
Jones did it.
Mr. Hunter did not do that for his family. Yes. So very, very interesting. So
Do you know when Hunter sold to Jones?
I believe that had to be between 1950 and 1952.
Okay.
So then when was Lakewood in operation? After that purchase?
Yes, after that purchase, correct. Yes. Until Mr. Jones passing, oh my gosh, I'm not going to remember that. I would say he passed in the early 90s.
I have the
You have his obituary?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
passed in 1990, and it said he
Okay.
retired in 1981.
Yes.
So was it still operating, though, after his retirement?
Yes. He might have retired. He had various jobs. He worked at the Aero factory that down there also. So that could be referring to that type of thing, but he continued to run the resort. As he grew older, we had son-in-laws come up and everything, and we would help him with various things that he needed at the resort.
So as he got older, your family got more and more involved in the upkeep and
In the care.
in the
Yes,
care?
Yes.
And was it mostly your family using the place, or were there a lot of other families?
Well, there were other families, like Barb Mitchinson is her name. It was the Cody family. Actually, we purchased our cabin from Mr. Cody, her brother. And so the Codys owned, I think they owned at least 3 of the cabins. So eventually, Barb Mitchinson, she's the only one left that owns one of those cabins. Her sister sold, and her brother also sold.
So did you purchase your cabin after his death? After
Yes.
it was no longer in operation?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The cabins were sold because he had no children. His niece, Mary, she took over the ownership of the cottage, and so she sold each individual unit. So that was something that was kind of difficult for our family, because my father was always a firm believer that a handshake was your bound, arrangement, and we would shake our head on that one. But my father had made arrangements to purchase the resort, and they shook hands on it. And so my parents, they had a cottage in Presque Isle, and he sold that cottage because he thought he was going to.
Did he shake hands with Harland or Mary?
Harland.
Harland, okay.
Harland. But when Harland passed away, this all happened very quickly. They were in the process of, they had already sold their cabin, and they were going to take on, but it didn't happen that way because the niece ended up going a different route. So we waited and waited and waited, and I was able to, Emer Butler, she called me on the phone, and she told me that the chickadee was for sale, and I grabbed the phone to the realtor, and within 48 hours it was mine.
I'm so glad you were able to do that.
Oh, it was just joyous. It was a joyous thing for all my family, because we were back home. Mm-hmm. We were back home. So
I often think about this place as my home more than I did my city home.
Yes.
Do you have those same feelings?
Absolutely,
it looks like?
Absolutely. It's a yearning that you have throughout the year when you're living in the city. You have this yearning to get back there, and many times we come up for an excuse. Well, my sister's birthday is in January, and we have to come up for that, or something happens in late November and we have to come up for that, and so we are fortunate to be able to share different things at different times of the year up here, so we're grateful, and the Northwoods beauty is always in our hearts.
So if you think about Lorraine and Harland, can you think of any stories to tell us about them?
Well, I know, one story. I know they were from Kenosha, and I remember when I was in grade school, we went home for lunch. This was in Kenosha. We went home for lunch. I was walking back to school with my sister, and there was a car accident not too far from where we were walking. And sure enough, coming out of the car was poor Mrs. Jones, who got most of her teeth knocked out. Oh. That was, I know, we were trying to help her. And so that's kind of a sad, goofy story, but it was so shocking that here we're walking to school and we see Mrs. Jones. It was quite alarming, yeah. But Mr. Jones was quite the character as far as, what we could do for him, and what we could, if we did something bad, we could make up for it by doing something for him that was good, you know. But he had a pickup truck that when we bought the cabin, that was kind of included if we wanted to buy Harland's old truck. But Harland's old truck had a big hole in the gas tank. So you could only go a couple miles before you had to refill it. So I knew that, and so we said, no, we don't really want the truck, because you could get maybe back to go to town and back, but that's as far as you got. It was kind of humorous that way. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, but he was quite the character. Like I said, he didn't care for children as much as Mrs. Jones did, but they loved it up here. They loved it up here.
Mm-hmm. And did he go back to Kenosha? Obviously, they went back in the winter. They closed up and came home.
Yeah, I have a feeling, though, he moved from Kenosha, and I think maybe they went to Florida or something, because I know that his niece, she had a place in Florida, and I think that was their only relative.
Do you remember her full name?
Mary, that would be her maiden name. I would have to ask my sister, because her folks actually owned a trailer court in Saint Germain.
Do you remember her maiden name?
That's what I'm trying to remember. Yeah. Which my parents were in there too, so I'm having a brain fart right here.
That's okay.
Yeah.
What about the waterfront? What did you guys as children do while you were at the resort that had to do with the waterfront?
Right. All the cottages were, you had a boat. You had to supply your own motor, but you were given a boat. My father had this rule. You were not given a fishing pole until you could catch a fish on a cane pole. So we all had to work up work up the ladder to fishing poles, and we did a lot of swimming and things like that. I brought you I have a slew of pictures, but I only brought a few. This is a picture of the lodge, probably very early on. And then here's a couple pictures of the cottages.
And who is this in this photo? The two kids?
It could be, let's see. That is probably my sister Linda and my sister Diane. My sister Diane's the oldest. And then Linda's number 3. And this is our, like I said, we would stop and eat breakfast. That's us gathering in a park to eat our breakfast on tree stumps and things like that. And here's a picture. I'm thinking this was in the brown thrush. My grandmother, I think could be my sister Joyce Little and my mother. That's in the kitchen. And of course, at the time this is a picture, and I've blown this up several times. It's one of my favorite pictures of my mother swimming in the river with my 2 sisters. And that's my father coming in from fishing in the boat.
So which cabin are we looking at here?
Let's see. I'm not sure. That could be the Oriole, because there is something to the left, and that could have been the screened-in porch. Right. And here is, this is the brown thrush also. This is my mother, myself, and my sister Joyce.
So Joyce and Renee, and say your mother's name
Yes,
again?
Elaine.
Elaine.
Yeah.
Elaine, last name again?
Glarum.
Glarum, yep.
Yes.
That's cute.
And this is what we would do. We'd have picnics and at the fireplace and the picnic table in the front, and that was before my youngest sister was born.
So open compared to what it is today.
Yes, yes, very much. And this was one of our favorite evening activities, as just about everybody up in this area was going to the dump to the bears.
That's awesome.
Take your garbage to the dump and wait for the bears to come.
You never
Yeah.
got to experience that.
No, I never got to do
You're
that.
too
Yes.
young.
I was too young.
Yeah.
I was too young.
It was something. Oh my God! I know.
And then you'd always say, look at those crazy people from the city who are getting out of the car
Oh,
when
yes.
the bears are there. That's
Yeah.
dangerous.
We would never get out of the car.
No.
We'd dump our garbage and then run to the car. Yes, no. And here is, this is just us when we were young in front of my cabin.
Yeah, you can see Chickadee. I don't know.
And these are postcards that Harland and Lorraine had made out with pictures of all the accommodations.
Wow, those are great. Can we scan these?
Actually, if you want to keep those, you can keep
Oh,
those.
that's wonderful. So you have extras?
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
And I have his obituary here. Was his niece's name Mary Lee Gensler Miller?
Gensler, yes,
Okay.
yes, exactly.
Good,
Great.
good. Did you ever stay longer than a month?
I don't think we did. If we did, we went home and then we'd come back.
So you come back.
Yeah.
Now, did your dad hunt?
No, he never hunted. He fished. He fished every day. He loved fishing. And you could not make a peep in the boat. Not a peep in the boat. And what was interesting, as we got older and he got older, you know, it was almost like, do you know how much noise you're making in the boat, Dad? You know, in those days you had heavy, like metal
Orlocks.
tackle boxes and things that you drag, you know. So yeah, it was interesting. We had a lot of adventures on the water, that's for sure. We learned that the dreaded mosquitoes would go away at about 10:30 at night. So you could go out at 10:30 at night on the water fishing with no discomfort from the mosquitoes, and we usually had our most fun. We'd look up in the sky, you'd see 1,000 stars, sometimes shooting stars that my sister thought was aliens invading, so we had to turn around and come back. And so, yeah, it's beautiful, the night skies and, you know, the noises, and especially now, springtime I love springtime up here. It's one of my favorite times. The peepers are out in the woods, and I love them. I just, you know, you have to experience to know what a peeper is.
Yeah, yeah. What about animals and things? Did you ever have any encounters with?
Encounters with animals. We had, nowadays people are bringing their dogs and things, so you have little less occurrences with the dogs, but we've had, I had like a 12-point buck come right up the stairs next to my cabin and just stand there for 15 minutes. We were just like, just in awe, our jaw dropped. It was beautiful. And I had, I'm thinking they were brothers. They were real young bucks that would come into the back. And one you could almost feed out of your hand, and the other one was very squeamish. So I never knew what happened to the two of them, but it was interesting to watch them gallop and grow. Yeah. And of course, always feeding the chipmunks and the birds, and you know, what you could do to get a pileated woodpecker on your feeder. You know, you just
Work at that, yeah.
Yes, right. And the otters that you see out there sometimes playing, it's lots of fun. Lots of fun.
So now you said you have two other sisters that have
yes, they actually live in Mercer. They both live in Mercer, but they've been here. My one sister has been here probably 15 years, and my other sister came. They moved here from Pennsylvania, and so they've been here maybe 10, 12 years.
And what are their names?
That's Joyce and Bill Brundage, and Linda and Neil Hamrick. Yes. So they, you know.
They have the same feelings and wanted to come here.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, I have friends because we're retired now, and I have friends who are going to Florida, and some are going to Arizona, and I've visited some of these friends that live in Arizona, and I'm like, I have to have water. I have to have flowing water. I don't know if I could adapt myself to that type of thing just based on that. But we still, this is our home.
Do you have children?
I have one son.
And does he have the northern Wisconsin
He does.
fever?
He does. He's not a great fisherman, but he loves boating and kayaking and that sort of thing. As a matter of fact, he was asking if he could come up with his girlfriend, and I said, well, we're doing the bathroom reno right now, so we'll see. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
So, yes.
You have some more questions?
I do not have anything else.
Okay.
No.
I guess, tell me about your life. Did you ever have a time away from when you couldn't come to the cabin? Did you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I imagine different times that my husband had to have surgery. Our plans were kind of messed up, and but other than that, we have several friends that a gang comes up almost, and you know, we know a few people who have bought places up here also, and so we, you know, music in the park is always a special thing for get-togethers, and you know, and hopefully we can continue doing that.
Oh, definitely.
Yes. The only other thing I have is a picture of, because we all knew it was folding, and so you can blame this on my nephew. He confiscated this sign off of 51.
Oh, so it was the place to turn?
Yes,
Directional?
yes, yeah,
Very cool. So you have that.
yes,
Very good.
right.
So after Harland sold, he didn't get rid of the business until he passed away, and
Correct.
And then his niece sold. So,
Yes, yes.
So from 1950 till he died,
Right.
it was in his ownership.
That's correct.
And prior to that, Hunter had built it.
Yes.
Can you tell us anything about the Patterson cottages?
Actually, I'm not sure about that at all. I know I've heard it. I've gone past that area where it was, but I don't know anyone who had stayed at that cottage. We might have seen people coming up river to come fishing that way and wondering, where did they come from?
How about the name Frank Tishy?
Doesn't ring a
Doesn't
bell.
ring a bell.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Do you know of any other resorts on the Benson Lake area?
That area? Not really. I know there's 2 or 3 private homes right across from us on Benson. I think Greg Huff, he owns the house on top of the hill, and then there's 2 cabins. Like, it's a little difficult to get on that side, but I've always admired the one that's right across because it's fascinating. It's like in a Nordic style.
Yes, that was Les Jacobson's home. And he was Norwegian.
Yes, yes.
He was a ski jumper also.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He's got little dragons all on the. It's very cool. I've been in the house once. The only thing I didn't care about it has a very little galley kitchen, and But other than that, it's just fantastic place.
Now tell me, how old were you until your parents stopped bringing you there, or did that never stop?
Oh, really? Yeah. We, John Butler would rent his one cabin to us. So we probably continued renting that until probably the late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And are your parents still living?
No, they both passed away. But my mother, that's what the interesting part of it. She loved all the birds up here, but of course her favorite was the chickadee. And everything, I mean, she'd do chickadees on her sweatshirt. She'd make chickadees on embroidery. She even had chickadee as one of her email names, everything was chickadee. And when Emer Butler called and said the chickadee's for sale, I know my mother was that was the same year she passed away. Yes, and I got the chickadee.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great story. And she knew you got the chickadee.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That's
yeah.
great. Great. Any traditions that you still carry on that you did as kids when you're all together there?
Oh, wow. Interesting. I guess we just, when we were young, we had the rowboats and things like that. And when I discovered kayaking, it was a whole new experience. You are in the water with the fishes and the birds, and you can get into little crevices and maybe even go down to the rapids and do things that we couldn't do before. I know my sisters, we like to, especially in the fall, we like to get in our boats and go down river and see the leaves. And so we all get together and hop in our boats so we can experience that. And there was an occasion, that was probably, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago. We were coming back, and my one sister, she had to get to work. So she was in the canoe with my oldest sister, and I told them explicitly, don't bring the canoe up the hill, just get out of the canoe and I'll bring it up the hill for you. Well, so me and my sister Barbara, we continued on because there was more leaves to take pictures of. That we had many pictures of the same leaves, but they're back, So we kind of stayed back, and then we turned around. And as we got closer to the cottage, we're hearing my sister going, "We beat you." What is she talking? We know she went ahead of us. What does she mean, we beat you? We beat you? We know you beat us. And as she's screaming, we hear, "We need you." They tried to bring the canoe up the hill. They both ended up falling down the hill, my one sister who has breathing problems, she landed face first in the water, swallowed some water, but she was on shore laughing hysterically. And it was pretty humorous that, you know, we almost killed our sister, but, you know.
She didn't listen to you.
She didn't listen. She didn't listen. No, no. So we still talk about that, yeah.
Well, it sounds like you have some wonderful memories, and
We do.
and now you have your own piece of that
Yes.
forever, and that's so
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah. We had our cousins come from California. They had never experienced up north before. And I remember my Uncle Joe, this was early in the morning, and we're all in all the cabins, of course, and he's screaming, "I caught a northern, I caught a northern." So everybody runs out, and here he's got a roll of northern toilet paper on his hook.
That's pretty funny. That's
So
a
that
great
was,
story.
Yes, that was a great joke.
So if you could say, part of Emily's job is to encapsulate your story of that resort. And I think, even though we don't have Harlan and Lorraine here,
Right.
I think we're feeling that place, a special place. If you could encapsulate, like in a couple sentences, how would you describe Lakewood Lodge's experience?
Wow. Well, I think it was, they did open it up for you to enjoy yourself. I mean, they brought joy to us as children. They gave us an opportunity to have our minds and hearts open up into a different place that we had never been before. And they contributed to us continuing to have that joy and wanting of the Northwoods.
That's really nice. I like the idea that I almost get the feeling like it was your place, even though they owned it.
Right. Oh,
You felt like it was your place.
yeah, Harlan kind of thought that too sometimes.
Oh, that's cute.
Yes.
Is there anything else you can tell us?
I'm gonna let, when you talk to Barb Mitchinson, she probably has a lot more information too. She saves a lot of things and has a lot more details. So I'm gonna let her try to correct my years and things like that, and she'll help you with that.
Well, you are a delight to interview, and I'm so glad we're capturing this place because
Yes.
it's special.
Yes, it is special. Was many resorts in Manitowish Waters that it's kind of sad. My oldest sister, she always has her heart broken because there's so many resorts that have closed, and it's not as family oriented as it once was.
Right.
And I know her sons, they both love coming up here, but they all find difficulty trying to find a place.
Oh.
So that's hard, and they're used to being up here also. They've got the bug also, and they want to continue coming up, but you know, the resorts are hard to find.
And you grew up in the heyday of the resorts.
Exactly.
And I did too.
Exactly.
There were summer places, but summer places were quaint and small,
Right.
and the resorts were quaint, and most of them were small.
Yes.
And so you had that family gathering place.
Yes. Exactly. It was more homey, more family oriented. You know, more kid friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially going to the dump.
Yes, yes. And you know, the woods was our babysitter, so
Right.
yeah.
Now, how about frogs on the river? Did you have a lot of frogs?
Oh, yes, we did.
It's one of my favorite things were my frogs.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell me about catching
And clams,
and
and
clams.
clams.
Did you ever find a pearl?
Oh, well, yes, of
Oh,
course
well, tell
we
us that
did.
story.
Yes. Well, my one sister, she said that there were pearls in the clams, and we said there wasn't. And so we set out doing our project in clamming and opening them up to find a pearl. And she finally opened one up, and sure enough, there was something there. And she proved us all wrong. Yes.
She still have that?
I'm not sure she does. I'll ask her though. Yeah, but frogs were, exceptional. If you could catch the big ones especially.
The big bullfrogs.
Yes, yes. And there were more frogs when we were younger, that's for
it was
sure.
everywhere in the water, yeah.
Yeah.
In all the tadpoles,
Right.
the different stages.
Yes.
You didn't need a science teacher.
No, you did not. I feel bad for kids that weren't able to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of sad.
Yeah.
And we used to go to Star Beach all the time. That was a highlight. And Star Beach is still there, not as like it was, but it's still Star Beach. But
Great swimming place.
yes, exactly. If we weren't in the river.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much, you've told us pretty much the whole story of your family, and I'm excited
Right.
that we can share that.
Yes.